this in a minute.
I don't log in as a student.
All right. Get this out of the way as well. So now I'm actually recording my screen, I hope. And I'm going to go ahead and save this and even publish it. So now you should see one called sample if statement that is actually an assignment you could grab from the classroom. It's going to show you what to do. Don't grab the sample code just yet because I'm going to go through a demonstration. And for you to follow along, what I'd like you to do is in the online GDB is I'd like you to create a new project. So we're creating a new project. I'm going to make this more of a pointer, a more effective use of this. Is you're going to do create new project right here. And then I want you to make sure you change your language to C++. And the next thing you're going to do in here is always a good idea to make sure you can run, which is the green button at the top, and make sure you can run and see the output, which should say hello world. So this area down here provides input and output. So when we enter data later, we'll be doing it in this part of the screen as well. If you haven't picked up on it, you can click and drag to move this up and down. This line right here above there, I can move it up and down. All right. I can also collapse this part on the left so that I get a little bit more of my screen to just show the code. I want to zoom this in, and in Chrome you can go in here where it says zoom and you can change this to a higher value. I tend to use a scroll wheel to do that, but in case you weren't familiar with it, it's available from the 3 dots up here, and we can click on the word zoom, and I'm going to 200% so that what I'm capturing is clearer for you. I'm going to start by just simplifying the comments that I don't need, and what I want you to do is include, as a standard process, I want you to include who's doing the work, when you did it, and what it does. That's just kind of a normal thing in industry. So put in your name. By the way, I'd like you to have me in a shared screen. So if you got me on one screen, I'd like you to have another screen open, which has got your own work. We covered that a minute ago, how to do it in a Chromebook. So I will be on one screen like this, and your other screen will be on the other half. Now, for this purposes, I'll make mine full screen, but you don't have to worry about it. We can jump into this area soon. We don't need to do that right now. So here we are. We've got ourselves a line of code. And what I'm going to do is I like to have every line that prints out on the screen to typically go down another line. Can anybody remind me how I go to add the function to go down a line within a print statement? Does anybody happen to remember that? Public chat's got something in it. Excellent. So it is an escape code, which is actually backslash rather than /. Okay, now if I do it the other slash, it's actually not going to work the same way, and it's going to print that actually on the printout line. So it's an escape code sequence, and those go backwards as opposed to the comments which go forward. Slightly different on the keyboard, and I get them confused all the time. And I'll write a program, and all of a sudden I'll end up with /n at the end of a couple of lines right in the middle of sentences, and it'll be like, oh, yeah, wrong slash. So that happens a lot. The other thing that's going on here is we've talked about a return statement. And just as a recap, I've had you put in at one point in time your own ID number. It doesn't print because it's too large to fit into the space allowed for an integer. But let's make that a different value. I'm trying to think of a number that we might like. Favorite number. Anyone got a favorite number? Whole number. Favorite whole number. You can open up your mic and just throw out a number. Someone's typing a number. You can never remember. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so here's how I remember. On the keyboard, I know my comments. It's a good question. Let's cover it now. I know my comments are accessible easily through the keyboard here. So you'll notice it's the divide by and multiply symbols that are together. And so I remember that my comments are divisible. I can break them up very easily. right? So that's how I remember. And so if I'm not sure if it's going to be a comment or an escape code, the way I remember it is the comments are over there. The next clue to remember is that if you're escaping, you're not entering. And so if you see the enter key right here, and you look above it, there's the, sorry, I'm a little backwards there. There's the escape key, right? So escape versus enter. You're either going to enter the room or you're going to escape from the room. That would be one way to look at it. And since a new line is an escape code sequence, you're not entering, you're escaping. That's how I keep it straight. I see a response, favorite number 7, so we'll be returning 7 in this program because that number can be set and determined by the programmer. The standard is 0, but I want you to get comfortable making the computer do what you want it to do. If you want to use 7, use 7. Very good. All right, so this integer right here, that's a type of data, will match with whatever gets returned right there. And that 7 needs to be of the same type as what you're returning. In other words, you can't put a decimal value in there. You can't return the word, I don't know, banana. You just can't. It's got to be a number. So let's take a look at this. And if we ran it, it would then end with a 7. So the value of a computer is, as was described in the videos, is not that we can necessarily work with the same values like 7 all the time, but we can return a variable. Okay, so we don't have to return a 7 here. In fact, I'm trying to come up with an example where we might want to work with data in a game, like simple data. Let's use HP. And so if we're going to use HP, we're going to store it. For simplicity, we'll use a whole number. Generally speaking, even if we have a thermometer meter that we're showing, health, that health bar is usually based off of a whole number behind the scenes. And so if I'm going to store a whole number, a real number, we're going to set up an integer value, indicates no tense, and let's call it HP for health points or hit points, or I guess people can use it for more than one thing. And it's always a good idea to put a value into your variables as you name them. So basically, I would read this line as of type integer called HP, I'm going to assign the value 0. So if I had you in the room, I'd be having everybody say this out loud. So of type integer named HP, I'm going to assign the value of 0. That's how you read the code, so that you start to understand how the code is interpreted. So of type integer in the name called HP, I'm going to assign the value of 0, something like that. Now I've got something that I can print out. I could say hello world. I could say hello, your HP is. Now if I'm going to print a number, or if I'm going to bring a number in, I can print it out anywhere along this line, but I need to tell the computer where to put it. With printf, you say in the shape of or in the form of. So your HP is, and I'm going to put in a %sign, which is a special character that says in the format of, and that's an I, not a 1. So in the format of an integer, at this time. Now notice the green is going to be exactly what it is, but that %sign I says in that spot I'm going to put it. Anybody ever seen a form letter where it says dear and then it's got your name? And it goes on and talks about things, and maybe in the middle of it says your score is, and it's got a value there. This is one of the ways that can be done. They can merge in data, which could be like an address and name, and print at that point a variable. So within the parentheses, but not within the quotes, I'm going to put a comma. And commas are used to separate values very commonly within these arguments, a list of different variables. I need to put whatever I want to show up there. Now, if I put 0, it would always put 0. I can put a constant there, but I'm going to use this to show off what HP is. So if I just run this one line here, I'm also just going to return HP right here instead of the 7. Now, instead of using a 7 all the time, if I enter 7 as HP, somewhere before I print it out, it'll show up. So let me run that, and it should compile. And so what I want you to see here is this 0 is the value that is set within the background here. I kind of made it a little bit awkwardly spaced, that we set it at initialization time. I need to move that. I'll get rid of my comment there. All right, so now instead of just leaving it 0, we're going to ask the user to tell us what their HP is so we can start to make some decisions based on it. I'm going to copy this. Now what I did is I put my cursor at before the first character, and I'm holding shift. And as I hold shift, I touch my right arrow and it starts to highlight one at a time, right? That's going to take a while. But if I press the end key, I grab the whole line. Now with the whole line highlighted, I can do a copy with Control C, and then I can actually do a Control V to paste it. I've duplicated the line. Line 9 and line 10 now have the same thing. I can change this to say something like, please enter your HP. Now, I'm not going to print it on the screen. I'm just going to say, please enter your HP. Therefore, I'm not putting something in or taking it out. I'm just giving them exactly, please enter your HP. Now, to change that value, we're going to use something called Scanf. It's like a CN, but it's more professional. So I'm going to use Scanf. It also has the parentheses. It also has the quotes. It also has in the format of an integer. After that, we need to tell it where to put it in memory. Now, where to put it in memory is at a memory location called HP. So now when this happens, HP will start out at 0. We ask someone to enter a value, they enter it, and that's what's going to come back. So I'm going to try to run this. I'm going to scroll down so that my code's a little bit easier to see as I look at my output. I'm going to make it so that ideally one more line shows here. I guess that's probably good. All right, I'm going to move this up. There we go. I'm going to run this. Down in the lower half here, we should see it show up, please enter your HP, and we're going to put in 7. I've clicked down there and I pressed 7. Now, after HP, I didn't do a new line, and I didn't do a tab, and I didn't do a colon, and it's a little messy. I'll fix that in a minute. So now I've demonstrated how to set up a variable, prompt the user for input, and then display what value is there. Now you'll notice it also exited with code 7. So even though it starts out at 0, I bring in whatever's entered in the keyboard, which scrolled off the screen, but that was the value 7. So that printed here, and it also shows up here as my escape code. So I changed a value in memory and used it twice within the program. What questions do you have for me at this point? I'm going to pause this recording. All right, so now that we've got this set up to grab a value from the keyboard, we're going to start to set up some conditions. Now, when we hit the return statement, we're done. And just as a point of conversation, if I have additional statements down here, if I were to say something like, now we're going to, and just to, again, shift end to do a highlight, Control C to copy, come down here and do a paste. So now if I said something down here like, based on that HP, ... Now, code runs in order, top to bottom. There can be some ways to have what we call a go-to, or we can repeat things repeatedly. But generally speaking, it proceeds from line to the next. So when we get to this return statement, this line will never happen. Let me demonstrate that. I'm going to run this. It's still going to ask a question. I'm going to put in 2 this time. And you'll notice it never said based on that HP, because the return statement ends the program. It's done. So nothing down here gets done. If I simply reorder this, so I can drag that line down here so it's after, and I run it again, and just for consistency on this example, I'll put 2 in. This time it says based on that HP ... So the position is very important. In fact, if I tried to do this something with HP and I hadn't declared the variable yet, if I did that down here, because I'm referencing a variable and it's not been created yet, this is going to cause a problem as well. It says, I have no idea what this thing is that you're trying to use right here. So the order is very important. And I think I may have gone through a sample in an earlier class where we talked about the order is important. Something like telling a robot how to get ready for school, or could have even been something that we did when we were dealing with Lightbot. But either way, the order in which you do things is very important. All right, just checking for any messages here. Now that we got the HP, before we return it, I'm going to give myself some more space, and an if statement is going to return true or false. It's a switch, and we talked about that yesterday on a power supply. So we're going to say if something is true, we're going to put the condition in there, then we're going to do something. So it might be that we want to say that if something's true, we might say, let's say, you're good to go. And then go down a line, new line. So when would an HP be good to go? In other words, you don't need to worry about grabbing a power up. Probably when it's full, right? So how much HP are we going to use? Somebody give me a value. Something under 255. What's our max HP? 30 is fine. So we could say if 30 is equal to HP, good to go. Now, I want to point out 2 things on this line that relate to the questions. I am using 2 equal signs to compare them. Let me grab the pen. There is a difference. This single use is called an assignment operator, and it takes this value here and it pumps it over into HP. And that's with 1 equal sign only. This one down here is using 2, and it's like the scales of justice, and we're kind of saying, is HP equal to 30? So we're comparing 2 values. So there's a difference there. So let's try this. I'm going to do a run. Oh, and by the way, there is no semicolon here. So if I type in a number other than 30, like 5, below your HP is 5 at this time, based on that HP, nothing happens because it's not true. The way a statement works here is if 30 is equal to P, if it's true, this is what you're going to do. If it's not true, you're not going to do it. But a semicolon ends an if statement. So if I put a semicolon here and I run it again putting 5 in, the if statement's going to start and end at line 13. So let me put in the 5. Because based on that HP, you're good to go. Now, the syntax works, but the logic is wrong. The compiler goes, okay, it's true, but the semicolon tells me I'm done, so there's really nothing special to do. And that's why it's crucial not to have a semicolon at the end of a line that's an if statement. It will do the next line until it sees this semicolon, and then it's done. So just to make sure that we know which one's running, I'm going to copy and paste this line again. And I'm just going to add the statement here. I bumped the F12 key. It brought up the call stack. I'm going to put something down here like, I don't know, GG for good game. So let's try this again. And I'm going to put in 30. We expect now what will happen. I predict that 30 is equal to 30, and it's going to say you're good to go, GG. Scroll off the screen a little bit. There it is. Now I'm going to run it a second time and put in 5. which is less than 30, obviously. Oh, did it too early. Well, the first 5 I hit in the second one ended up being 55. I was impatient. We try that again. I will wait for it to ask the question. This typically doesn't happen with a scanf and printf, but because we're running in a little emulator, it could be that way. So this is unexpected. Oh, yeah, that's right, because it doesn't say you're good to go. Perfect. This is not true with a 5. Hello, your HP is 5 at this time. Based on that HP, it's not 30, so we're not going to say you're good to go. Let's make this stand out a little bit better. You're good to go. Nothing special about those characters there inside the quote. Same with those negative signs, it's just something so that it shows up on the screen a little bit more dramatic. Now, if you wanted this second line to only show up as part of that if statement, knowing that a semicolon ends it, there is a way to group more than one line. Does anybody know, and if you do, kindly type in chat, how I might be able to group both of these lines so that they both happen if I give it 30, but only with 30. Somebody was typing. You can talk too if you'd rather, just unmute and talk. Remove the semicolon from the good to go. So if we try that, what we're going to find is it's no longer a valid C++ statement. It's a good idea to try it. So let's go ahead and try it. Let's see if it even compiles. And by the way, I welcome this. I welcome this because this is a good example. Error expected a semicolon before the next statement on line 15. So if I click on the error message, it brings me right here and it says, before this printf, I expected to see a semicolon. So that was an interesting theory. What I'm going to do is I want to step back for a minute and look at line 19 and line 7. And what I'm going to point out to you is they look like opposites, almost like a set of parentheses, but they're braces. What we can do is we can actually use, if I type an open one, it's going to be a new thing called a block of code, where you can have more than one line of code, and they're all controlled by the same if statement. So a new concept for you is if you have multiple statements that you want to do as part of an if statement or a loop, is you can use a set of curly braces to set up a block of code so that they're both done. Now, that's great. If they're 30, we're going to see everything's good. But what if they're not? You could say else. Now, this set of code that's going to come in down here is going to only happen if it's not 30. So if it's not 30, we could set up a line of code that could even check another condition, such as if, let's say, 15 is, let's make it 16. If 16 is greater than your HP, which means your HP is 15 or lower, no semicolon, then what do we want to do? Then, if it's not 30, if it's less than 16, we might want to give them a heads up. So I'm going to come up here and copy these two lines. I'm going to paste them down here. So we're going to tell them before you battle, get a power up. And I'm going to change this symbol so that it looks a little different. So it's not asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I'm just trying to think of some character that I could use besides that. Oh, maybe I'll give them something like this. And then on the other end so that it stands out like this. Before you battle, get a power up. So if it got 15 or less, if 16 is greater than, which means 15 or less, it's going to say before you battle, get a power up. And down here, I'm going to change this so that it says Now I want to run this because I want you to see what's going on. I'm going to actually scroll back for a minute because I want you to see a little bit more of what's going on here. So I'm checking to see if it's 30, they're good to go, good game. If it's 15 or less, now notice, I do not have curly braces around this block of code. So when I put in 15, let's watch what happens. It's confused on line 27. That's good. Let me double click on it. I've got too many closed curly braces here. Now this says beautify over here. I'm going to try this, but before I do, I'm going to save this work, and I'm going to suggest that you learn to do this as well. Let's save this. So we're going to call this HP if project. And as I do so, I'm hoping I've got all of the code here. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to Control A, Control C. I've got it in copy. I'm going to click on this beautify. I'm going to try it. What it's done now is it's rearranged all of my curly braces to try to make sense. This is my first one. And if I click on this to close them, it shows me that main opens and closes before the return for HP. Therefore, I have an extra closed curly brace in here. If I open this up again and I scroll down, it means that this one's in the wrong location, and I'm going to delete it. Now, if I try to run the code, it's now properly matched up all of my open and closed curly braces. And now I want a value that's not 30, but it's greater than 15. So let me say 20. So it says, hello, your HP is 20 at this time. Based on that HP, food, good, yum. Now I did not see before you battle, get a power up. Because if it was 15 or less, and let me put a comment in here. That's for our purposes. Just to remind you that if 16 is greater, that means in this one's got to be 15 or less. Only then would I say this. So let me run it again. And instead of using 20, I'm going to use 12. So I'm going to go ahead and run this version. 12. So now, based on 12, it's additionally going to say, before you battle, get a power up, and then food, good, yum. What questions do you have for me? Why does this happen? Because this semicolon here makes it so that only the one line happens for 15 or less. That's my comment, but basically, if it's 15 or less, you're going to get this prompt right here. But when I put 20 in, 20 is not less than, so this line right here, line 22, did not show up on the earlier run, but it does in this run because the value 12 that I put in down here is in fact less. So there's an eraser here. All right, for 15 or less. Wow, this looks like a tank. See that? Shoot a little, like a bullet that fell out of a tank, right? These are the tank treads. Dun, 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 dun. Fire! Hopefully you laughed at that. Back to the pointer. No questions? You guys feel like you kind of got it? I think there's a couple more things we need to make sure we review. I'm going to jump into the if statement original questions and make sure I've covered the ones that we wanted you to have. La, 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 la. Private comment. A lot of people have turned it in. What's the deal with using a semicolon after a statement? You can open your mic and tell me if you haven't done this already, or if you've learned something. What's the deal with using a semicolon after a statement?
So that way it reads it, the way the code reads it.
Oh, wait, I see Jacob's got a question here. Jacob, in C++, would you rather put else, if together on one line, or an if statement nested inside of the other else statement? I can show you a PowerPoint to help you choose which structure looks the best, and it just depends on your implementation. So let me draw a picture here. That's a good question. I'm going to pause. I don't need to pause screencast. If I can do this, let me bring up Paint. All right, so flowcharting is basically the way that programmers would lay things out. Like, we drop in from the top, and we would say, like, if something's true, this is what you're going to do. Else, and then you could come down here, and if you want to make another decision with a diamond, so this would be an else if. Now, it's possible that you just say, if this is true, do this, and you don't have an else. You just check again, if. So I'm listening to myself, and I'm realizing that my explanation is not making any sense. All right. Let me do this. Add some text here. If. We're saying if it's 30, what we're going to, if it's 30, we're going to do one thing. And if it's not, we're going to check to see if it's, if 16 is less than it. Well, these are two different if statements. So the question is, would you rather put else if together on one line or an if statement nested inside of the else statement? All right. It depends on where those curly braces are that your implementation is going to vary. We're going to jump into the code again. So you could do else if here. But I can also, inside of this, I could take the 16 and I can copy that. And down here, I could just put a situation like else. And at this point, I can deal with some other code. I'm not going to do an if here. We know we're less than 20, but we know we're greater than 15. And at this point, we could, for example, so this is an example where we're somewhere like a value is 16 through not equal to 30, so 16 through 29. And the order in which you put these together is really up to the programmer. So somebody who's 16 through 29, we don't need to tell them to get a power up. We don't even need to tell them good food. They're just kind of like, you know, they're in that burn rate between full and the next. So they can just carry on. And this one, because, all right, so this is an instance where it gets confusing where I am in my curly braces. So I'm going to add a set just to make sure that this line happens and that these two lines are together. And that one should close out there. This one goes with a different one. Carry on. And I don't need to say good food. I might say battle away. The two lines are going to come on with a value 16 through 29. And the only way you can get to this else statement is if the other ifs are there. Now I'm going to click again on the beautify. It worked well before, but I'm going to do a save and then a beautify. So this is lined up, these curly braces, much better. Personally, I like these tabbed over so that they're within it. That's even more beautified. And because only that one statement's true, they don't have braces on it. That's why there's a difference here in this. If you wanted both of those to get together, then you'd want to add a set of curly braces in here. This is really for not just for documenting it with spacing and comments, but it actually clarifies what the code does. All right, I'm going to do a beautify one more time and a save. This alignment doesn't quite look right to me, so I may have mismatched parentheses. Let me try it. So we decided that we wanted to check the range 16 through 29 to see if this comes up. So I'll put in 17. Carry on, battle away. So it doesn't say that I'm full. It doesn't say I need to get additional HP. It basically says carry on, battle away. So I hope that helped with the question, but I'm not sure. Did that help, or is there a follow-up to that? So else if, else if, else if. Okay, so yeah, else if are two different conditions. You can use an else without an if, or you could use an else with another if. So there's two different implementations. I don't want to overly complicate things. They made it so I can't use my pen on my own face. I can frame myself, but if I go to write blue on myself, it doesn't work. I was going to draw a mustache on myself. Oh well. What's the clear all? Clear the whole screen. Alt Z. I'm new to this stuff. Make sure I'm on the screen. Alt Z. Back to my pointer. All right, that's probably a good example to use at this point. But what I want to do is jump in here and show you a couple of things that are easy to do wrong within an if statement. Okay, so these are things that you don't want to do, but I want you to be aware of. And the first thing is that you'll notice I have the literal on the left. That's the proper way to do it. What if I had if HP is equal to 30? Will this compile and will it work right? So let me bring up a poll and I'll do a custom one. So the options are won't compile, will compile and work, will compile, won't work, I don't know. So what, you just take a guess here. Do you think it won't compile? Do you think it will compile and work? Do you think it will compile and won't work, or you don't know? All I did is take the 30 and the HP and move them on opposite sides. If you don't know, just select IDK. Okay. Okay, let's try it. So I bet somebody out there tried it first. So here I'm going to run it. I'm going to put in the 30. Right, with a number that's not 30, like 5. Oops, I got to wait. Enter. So that seems like it worked. Only when 30 goes in does it work. Now, let me try making a human mistake. I'm going to actually forget to put 2 equal signs in there. If I only have 1 equal sign in there, it no longer is saying, are they equal? What's it doing? Somebody open their mic and tell me what this statement would do here. What's that going to do?
It would assign HP to 30 instead. And then it would run the statement.
I'm sorry, I had I had you muted by for some reason on this side. Say it again now.
It would set HP equal to 30 and then run inside the if statement.
Yes, it would. That's exactly right. What it does, because the literal's not on the left, is it takes the 30. That's an assignment operator now, because there's only one of them. It's going to take this value here, the 30, and it's going to pipe it into HP, just like I explained up here. Now, if 30 goes into HP, the if statement says, is any of this true? Now, numerically, false is 0, and since it's not a 0, it's going to say it's true no matter what. Even if I put a 5 in, it's going to say that I'm good to go. Let me demonstrate that. I'm going to run it again with no changes, and I'm going to put the 5 in. It says you're good to go. Now, it compiled, but it didn't work properly. I didn't even ask you about this one, but that's an example where if you forget to do that, now let me go back in here. Now, this is a really hard thing to debug because it compiles and it runs and you look at it. And because you made the mistake, you're going, if HP is equal to 30, I've got the statement in there, but really it's an assignment statement. And it says into HP, assign the value 30, and then figure out if it's not 0. That's not what you meant. What you meant was see if 30 is equal to HP. Now, if you do this with one assignment statement and you have the 30 on this side, the compiler will stop you. So over here, let's try to run this. All right, I don't know if I can reopen this or not. Connection to the server was lost. This is an unfortunate occurrence when it happens. I luckily saved my work, so maybe I can open it. Let's download. That's new. Upload. I don't know what I've got in my copy and paste. Let me try to paste it. No, I may have lost it. This would be horrible. And I get an advertisement for hefty. I really don't want to have to type it all in again. Let me explain to you this way. I'll do a new one. And we'll just call this bad if statement. Oh, I could have done a new one from over here, I think. Here we go. My projects. It's fine. Maybe I can find it. HP if project. Let's see what we got. Woohoo! Saved it. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say if HP is equal to 30, but the literal is on the left. So let's see what happens if we go to run this. Compilation error. That means C3PO said, no, he doesn't talk that way. He says, sir, that makes no sense. Right? Because we can't assign, L value means left value. It's telling me that I can't, and let's look at the line number. It's saying I can't take HP and assign that into 30. Because it says 30 is always going to be 30. It's a literal. You can't change 30. You can't make it whatever you've got in memory. So that's why I want you to have the literal on the left, because it'll catch this. It'll prevent you from making that error. And it'll automatically, you'll go, oh, yeah, I got to have two equal signs. Otherwise, I'm making an assignment operator. And so now if it's something other than 30, like 5, based on that, before you battle, get a power up. Food good, yum. And I haven't even pointed it out, but we continue to have whatever the value is. And the reason I'm doing that is I want you to know that you can return a value other than 0. It's based on what the programmer wants to do. Now, this might be an incomplete version of what I did, but what I want to do is make this available to you and give you some time to work on it. And you can set up your own structure here. In session 1, the link that I posted there with the code was actually, let me do a save on this and share. Copy this. So in the shared notes, you can look at a sample that I did from first session. And here's a sample I did from today's session. That's not currently on screen, but I'm putting that out for the recording. So there's 2 different versions. Second session's getting in the notes. I'm going to copy these while I'm thinking of it, and I'm going to pop them into your assignment. Okay? Because if you're not in the chat right now and you look later, I want people to have access to it. I'm not trying to be exclusive or exclusionary to anybody who's not in here. As a reminder, today email me about your grade. Whoa. I just did something weird and everything closed. Okay, I'm still in my conference. Somehow I lost my Google Classroom link. I'll get back there again. I can do that. I'm going to grab my Google Classroom, go to my calendar. I kind of moved my mouse around and everything kind of went wonky. What I wanted to make sure you knew is that you do email me, do the speed test. This was the private comment. You probably already got it done. And then something I've got on the calendar for Monday. This in-class activity we'll do together. But this is the one where you show some if statements. And in the instructions here, I'll add another comment that says, here's our samples from session 1 and session 2. Here they are. All right, if I send that comment out, if you looked at the activity, you should see that there's now an assignment out there for you. So I think I'm done doing the work I need to do here. I'm gonna stop